Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Darkest Hour. I'm your host, Amanda Jane. Do you remember what it was like being a child? That mix of wanting to grow up so fast, but deep down knowing you sort of need your guardians to guide you, at least for a little. The combination of being fearless yet terrified. Everything is scary or fun or just new. Some things are timeless, though, and fear itself is one of those things. A stranger trying to invade your space in a place you're most vulnerable. Being cornered by someone you don't know, or even someone you do. Though a lot of tonight's stories involve childhood experiences, these types of experiences aren't exclusive to children. Some of these stories just remind us that, even as adults, we can be victim to the horrors of the world. So, let's get started, shall we? My elementary school was about 25 steps away from my front door, so I was a latchkey kid. It felt safe enough for long enough. My mom, a single mother, worked less than a couple of miles away at the post office. She worked in the actual office and held a position of somewhat power, I guess, because she was always busy and people always depended on her for something. Mom wouldn't get off for another 2 hours from when I got out of school. Her only conditions were that I call her as soon as I got home, locked all of the doors, and only in case of emergencies did I call her again. She was always home promptly at 5:35. This was 5th grade, so I was about 10 years old. I get inside my house after school, and I call my mom. We do the usual back and forth you do with your mom as a kid, and then she reminds me not to call again unless it's an emergency. This may seem weird, so I'll explain. It's important to understand that I called my mom for just about everything, which I think affected her job a little bit. I'm talking things like, where are my slippers? Where's the remote? Where is insert anything here? I mean, I was 10, but surely I needed to learn a bit of independence too. So anyways, I agree, only for emergencies. As I'm finishing up some tsunami, I notice that someone is walking in front of my house, pacing almost. Under any circumstance, I'm already nervous because that's how I am as a kid, and a little bit now too. So I don't move. I just watch the man as he starts to walk up my walkway, looking from left to right as he does. He's middle-aged, probably not quite 6 feet tall. He's got a belly like my granddad did at the time, no facial hair, and he wore a jean jacket of sorts with some sort of athletic pants, and he wore thick glasses. The way our curtains are in the front room, I can see out, but you can't really see inside unless you press up against them, I suppose. And that's exactly what I see the man start to do. The moment he steps off the sidewalk walkway to his left, toward the window, I jump up and walk out of view, quickly, into the hallway. From here, I can see both the front door, the back door, and most importantly, I can see enough of the window to see that he's pressed against it, looking inside. My 10-year-old brain is going absolutely nuts in that moment. I realize I'm essentially trapped in this hallway, whereas the cordless phone is sitting in front of the TV. The TV is on. Is that good or bad? I have no idea. The man's shadow leaves the window frame, and I start plotting to grab the phone. Maybe he left. Boom, boom, boom. 3 heavy-handed knocks echo through the house. Oh, another rule my mom had. Never open the door for anyone. Ever. Initially, I froze. But quickly after, I ran to grab the phone. I grab the phone and I hear 3 more heavy-handed knocks. Boom, boom, boom. I slowed my running to about a slow step, and I turned myself around, making my way back to the hallway, backwards. But I hear a man's voice talking loudly through the door.
Hey, I can see you're in there.
I now start to dial my mom, but I quickly hang up, worried this may not be an emergency. I decided to sit down in the hallway with my vantage point. As the man continues to deliver knocks, they seem to be getting faster. Boom, boom, boom. My brain almost explodes when I see a shadow through the back door blinds. I hear what sounds like someone trying to open the sliding glass door. Surely, this is now an emergency. I start to dial again, and I hear the man at the front door say loudly,
Hey, I said I can see you. Open the door.
Followed by a jiggle of the handle. Mom, someone's trying to get inside the house. The moment these words left my mouth, I feel a rush of tears cover my face, but I'm trying to stay quiet. I'm on my way. Don't open the door. You're safe inside, okay? I beg her not to hang up, but she promises she'll see me in less than 5 minutes. Longest 5 minutes of my life. The man, the knocking one, is still knocking. Still trying the door. The man who is at the back door, he's not there anymore, but I have no idea where he's gone. I sit in the hallway, terrified. Behind me, down the hallway, is the bathroom. It's the only room in the house with a lock on the door. I decide to barricade myself in there. The moment I relax and sit in the tub, I tense up again. Through the fog-style glass window, I see the outline, 2 hands and a face, pressing against the glass in an attempt to see inside. They try the window as they tried the door. I can hear knocking in the distance, so I conclude this is the sliding glass door guy. I'm in a full fetal position, trying to block all of this out. Surely it's been 5 minutes. I hear the most relieving yet terrifying sound ever, the sound of my mother screaming out to these men, telling them to get the fuck away from her house, and what the hell do they think they're doing? I hear another voice too, familiar. It's deeper and more assertive. It sounds like my mom's friend Ray. He works at the post office too. And Ray, he's not a small guy. He is, at that point in my life, one of the biggest guys I'd seen. Ray is yelling that he's going to kick their ass and that they're so done. I can't see anything and I can hardly hear anything besides yelling. So I just fetal up in the tub, plug my ears, close my eyes, and wait. I wasn't waiting long. Suddenly, I hear pounding on the bathroom door, and without context of who's on the other side, I panic. But my mom says in a quick pace, Amber, it's Mommy. Open up, honey, it's Mommy. I run to the door, unlock it, open it. My mom picks me up, hugging me furiously. Asking if I'm okay, she grabs the cordless phone and dials 911. She takes us both into her room, and I look out her window, which faces the front. I see Ray. He has one knee on each of the men's backs. Both men are face down on our front lawn. He's also managed to secure their arms. This man was my hero. Being 10, Knowing I wasn't supposed to be home alone, I was equally as terrified to talk to the police as I was waiting in that house for my mom. But my mom reassured me that I wouldn't be taken away from her if I told the cops what happened. So I did. When they eventually showed up, they took my statement, investigated the outside a bit, and arrested the guys for attempted burglary. As a kid, I now felt safe. But my mom, she didn't. She ended up changing jobs, working a shift that would allow her to come home when I was out of school. I know the job wasn't as good because we did the whole downsizing thing, but my mom did seem happier. And naturally, so was I. Pretty sure I didn't stay home alone again until I was past 18. Kinda crazy, but these things leave a stain, you know? When I was older, my mom told me that the police found a bag near the bathroom window. It had a crowbar, duct tape, some sort of multi-use tool, and zip ties. This was enough to arrest the men. Otherwise, they would have just walked free due to a misunderstanding. Attempted burglary doesn't come with a life sentence, though, so I understood even more why my mom felt she needed to move us fast. My friend likes to go mushroom foraging, and one time, she brought me with her. We got further and further into the woods, getting distracted by cool rocks, different mushrooms, a cool stick, or even just by talking. We were having a great time, just the two of us, until we stumbled into a clearing where a man was sitting, skinning what looked like a deer. I was frozen for a second. I mean, I moved to this yeehaw-ass town about 1.5 years ago. I'm from the Bronx, where you see weird shit, but I'm definitely not used to hunting culture. My friend and I were just sort of frozen. The man looked up, covered in blood, and said,
"You know it's not safe for girls like you out here, right?"
Then he let out a raspy laugh, instantly chilling my bones. He picked up his frighteningly large knife and just kept skinning the deer and muttering about all the dangerous animals in these woods. My friend and I were just nodding, not sure what else to do or say. He looked back up at us and he said, "There's the bears, sure, the mountain lions, the fisher cats, and the rabbit coons. But the most dangerous thing out here." He leaned forward and pointed the knife. "Man, the most dangerous game there is." My friend and I made eye contact and just booked it through the woods, through the bushes and thorns. And eventually we found our way back to her property. Not sure if creepy hunter guy was just scaring us for shits and giggles, but fuck, it was creepy. I'd like to think that he just got some fun out of scaring 2 teenagers, but Jesus Christ, not in the mood for this dude to pull a frickin' Robert Hansen. This whole thing never really freaked me out until the end. I hadn't really thought about it until tonight. Granted, it's not nearly as creepy as some of the things I've heard, but now that I recall it, I can't imagine why a grown man would repeatedly call a child. When I was a kid, about 12, my mom bought me a flip phone so we could call and text about when my parents were getting me from school. Also, I always roamed the neighborhoods with friends, sometimes pretty far for a 12-year-old, I guess. They started the phone plan in another state before we moved, and they never changed numbers. So when I got a phone, my number matched their area code. A couple of months after getting the phone, this guy called me from a number with our same area code that was now over 700 miles away. I first answered because I thought it might be a family member back home. I asked the standard, "Hello?" in my 12-year-old kid voice, to which a weirdly deep-voiced, almost dopey-sounding guy responded, Derek." I said, "No, this is Logan." He then asked for Derek again. I apologized for the confusion and hung up. He ended up calling so much, asking for Derek, that I had to ask my mom how to block a wrong number. We did that. But then he started calling me from other numbers with our area code. Different almost every time. This would happen 2 to 5 times a day, almost every day. It went on for weeks. It was always during school or in the evening. I wouldn't answer during school, but I could see the missed calls from my old area code. I distinctly remember one evening when I was taking out the trash, a random number from that area code called me. I answered. He asked, "Derek?" in that same weird, deep, dopey voice. I shouted into my phone. It'd been months now of this. "No, there's no Derek here. Are you stupid?" I went into a tantrum. I was so upset by this guy always calling. I don't remember if he apologized, but either way, I hung up and started crying from frustration and not understanding. Nothing happened for about a full week, and I thought maybe screaming and losing my 12-year-old shit with him over the phone had worked. Then, on a random weeknight, when I was in bed at 9 or 10, my phone started ringing. It startled me because I was just about to drift off when it rang. It also scared me because he'd never called me at night before. I answered. It was him again. He asked, "Derek?" Big surprise. I responded kind of quietly because I was worried my dad would be upset with me, even though now I know he would have just been upset with the guy who's harassing his son. "No, there's no Derek here. There's never been a Derek here. Stop calling me. Why do you keep calling me? You can stop." He was silent for a few moments before asking, "Derek?" again. I don't know why, but that terrified me. Adrenaline shot through me, and I got queasy, shaky. I hung up, turned off my phone, huddled under the blanket. The next day, I insisted my number be changed. My mom and I had to go to the store to do it, but we did it, and it ended. The calls never resumed after that, but I still can't come up with a reason as to why some grown dude wanted to harass a little kid over some friend or somebody who clearly wasn't there for months on end. Talking childhood trauma, huh? Here's one. Mid-90s. I'm on a field trip with my class in 3rd grade. We're going to the salmon hatchery because we spent the last month researching and doing projects on the salmon's life cycle. And it's the one and only trip that my dad will ever attend. It's my lucky day because he shows up soberish, at least to the untrained eye. You'd mistake my father's speech as concentrated enunciations before you'd suspect he's tipsy. And again, this day he wasn't too tipsy. We all packed on the school bus for hours until we reach our destination. The salmon hatchery is in the middle of the forest. The side we arrive on is guarded by a giant metal fence that we all file out and stand against while the teacher counts us. Once the number of kids matches the number on her paper, she presses a call box and says, Cedar Park Elementary has arrived. The metal gates open and we follow our teacher, Miss Sawyer, to this salmon ladder thing. It looked like giant concrete stairs with a waterfall going down it, in between two flat cement areas. That's where we meet the two women who will be showing us around. This is how they start our field trip. Lady 1 has a blue dress with salmon printed all over it. Lady 2 is fitted up in all of the rubber fish gear, boots, suspenders, Carhartt coat. Lady 1 hands us all a little pamphlet with a map of the hatchery. Then she asks the class if we want to see a really big salmon that came in today. It's extra special because this one's pregnant. Kids cheer and lady number 2 walks over to this tank that they have in the back of their truck. She pulls out this huge Chinook salmon. She brings it over to the crowd of children, and it's still alive, flipping and flapping while she tries to hold it steady. Then lady number 1 goes, "Do you want to see if it's pregnant?" Again, we all cheer, not knowing what she meant. We all form a half circle around lady number 2 as she struggles with the slippery, gasping fish. We still are unsure how they're going to check if it's pregnant. Lady number 2 gets the salmon by the tail with one hand and lets the rest of its body start flopping on the concrete. With her other hand, she pulls a club from her lower cargo pocket. And with no warning at all, in front of 24 small children, she proceeds to bludgeon the salmon to death with everything she's got. We watch in horrified silence as blow after blow is laid down on this fish until it stops moving. No more flipping, no more flapping. My friend Sammy grabs my arm, and I see tears in his eyes. Then it goes from bad to worse. Lady number 1 walks over to lady number 2, who's now pulling a big knife out of her cargo pocket. Lady number 1 says, "Okay, let's find out if she's hiding any eggs." Lady number 2 lifts the salmon up and fillets it right down the middle. Hundreds of little pink eggs splash onto the ground and continue to drip down. When the flood of fish eggs is done, lady number 2 does a discus spin and launches the salmon carcass into the trees, saying we're also helping feed the bears by doing this. Lady number 1 then directs us all to follow her into the main building to continue the tour. The horrified silence is held amongst the children. We all huddle inside this cold, smelly brick building. Each room we're shown resembles the last, with giant loud machines all doing their respective jobs to make the hatchery run. Midway through, my dad tells everyone he's going back outside to smoke a cigarette. Lady number 2 joins him. They both walk out as we continue strolling through the rooms. Finally, eventually, it's lunchtime. All the kids gather outside near a cluster of park benches and picnic tables. Earlier, I was excited because I knew my mom packed me my favorite lunch. Now, I'm still trying to find my appetite. My dad still hasn't returned, but I see lady number 2 getting back from whatever she was doing before her smoke break. I sit at a table with my friends, mainly Sammy, 2 other quiet kids. We eat our sandwiches while staring out at the forest, recounting the sickening start to our field trip. Then Sammy stops and points out towards something in the distance, in the tree line, and he says, "What's that?" Following his gaze, my stomach sinks down as my eyes become fixed on a huge creature staring back at us about 50 yards into the forest. One of the quiet kids gets up and runs to another table, saying nothing. I continue looking, staring intently. At first, I thought it was a really big bear standing on its hind legs, trying to get a better look at us. But as my eyes rapidly examined the creature, I could see that it had a large, bloody carcass of sorts, grasped in its hands. The carcass seemed larger than a fish, and the creature, well, it was like no bear I'd ever seen. It had defined arms, shoulders. Most importantly, it was holding something with hands. Really large hands, but hands nonetheless. It was huge, and it looked comfortable on two legs. I realized Sammy isn't saying anything. The other kid, either. We're all just staring. My stomach sinks deeper as I remember I still haven't seen my dad return. It's been a while now. Panicking, I think the worst. What if that thing killed my dad? What if that bloody thing it's holding is my dad? As horrible thoughts race through my mind, I never take my eyes off the thing. I just stare, examining it. Sammy says, "Maybe we should tell a teacher or your dad." I can't bring myself to move, but a few moments later, I break myself out of this trance. I stop looking for just a moment to turn my gaze to Sammy. He's still looking, and I say, "Sammy, I don't know where my dad is. What if that thing has my dad? What if my dad's dead?" I almost start crying, but I suck it up. The other quiet kid is now crying, though, drawing attention to us, but the creature doesn't move. Sammy looks at me. We look back at the thing, and then we both jump up off the picnic table to turn around and find our teacher. Right away, we're met with one of the other parents, and then Miss Sawyer. She's asking us what's going on. Why is everyone upset? First, Sammy and I talk at the same time, but she makes us stop talking, assuming that we're arguing or something. She turns her attention to the crying kid, and I'm feeling like I'm going to burst if I can't just get this lady to let me talk. I look around since I'm forced to be quiet, and the first person I see is my dad. He's sitting on a bench near the bathrooms, reading something. I'm relieved beyond belief, and when we make eye contact, I wave like crazy. But when he sees me, he heads into the bathroom. Seriously, Dad? By the time our teacher settles down the not-so-quiet kid, she actually lets us talk. It's no use. The creature is already gone. Frustrating. Sammy and I, like always, we sat together on the bus ride home. My dad, he wasn't interested, but still, Sammy and I talked about it the whole time. The creature was like nothing I'd ever seen at the time. Something that after getting a good look at, was not a bear. As an adult, I'm confident I saw a Bigfoot. It's amazing how foreign a concept it is to some, how resistant they are to the idea, whereas others just lean all in, like Bigfoot followers, lovers, hunters. I don't know about all that, but I'm pretty sure these things do exist. I'm pretty sure Sammy and I both saw one that day. I wonder whatever happened to Sammy, too. We lost touch after 6th grade, but he was a cool dude. It'd be cool to bounce this story off of him all these years later. I guess I'd just say, keep an open mind. And maybe don't let your kids go on a field trip if you see that it's for a salmon hatchery. That absolutely scarred me, probably more than the Bigfoot. That is, after I realized he wasn't holding my dad's corpse. The following story was told to me by my grandmother a few years back. She was visiting us a few days ago when I asked her to retell us the story. I don't know if it's true or not, but I believe her, being a person who believes in ghosts, spirits, God, etc. Well, the story goes as follows. It was when my mom was in 6th or 7th grade. The year was 1991, I guess. All of my grandmother's daughters, total of 5 sisters, including my mom, plus her son, were home. My granddad was at work at the time. It was around 9 p.m. at night. All my aunts, including my mom and my uncle, were all huddled in the bedroom with my grandma. Then there was a knock on the door. My grandma, being the brave woman she was, went to answer the knock. Before she opened the door, she asked who it was, and to her shock, someone said, "It's me. Let me in." The only catch was, it was my mom's voice. Nana, what I call my grandma, was shocked to hear it. It was obviously not possible that it would be my mom, as she was sitting inside. Now, after hearing the voice, my Nana knew that something had to be done to protect her kids, so she told everyone to grab a weapon. When everyone was armed with either kitchen knives or long wooden sticks, they went to the door, and my Nana shouted, "Who's there? I know you're not my daughter." There was silence, and then they heard a very, very, very creepy laugh. Way creepier than any horror movie. They waited a few minutes. Then my mom, being the oldest, got fed up and opened the door. There was no one there, just a piece of thread that was worn on the feet. The thread was not there before, my Nana told me, and the front gate was locked. Everyone was spooked out and they went to bed. Nothing has happened since. My mom doesn't remember anything, but I guess that's a given since it's been 31 years since the incident. This is a story that happened many years ago when I was around 8 or 9. My parents and I lived in a very beautiful, big old house. It used to be a hotel in the 19th century. The house had 4 extra apartments, and in one of them lived this middle-aged guy who we'll call F. The house was placed on a very small but long road that went between fields and a small forest, all of it going downhill before it ended right by the beach. There were maybe 15 houses and only one other kid my age, so I'd sometimes visit with the adults in the area. There were a few incidents with F, the guy that rented one of the apartments. The first one happened when my friend and I were roller skating and we met F, who was out on his bicycle. We asked him if he would tow us because we were tired, and he let us hold on to his bike. At first, we thought that he was great because not all adults would have been okay with that idea. But the ride didn't go so well. Once we held onto the bike, he started going faster and faster. And I mean really fast. It was summertime, and we only had on shorts and skirts. Back then, we also didn't have a lot of protective gear, so we absolutely didn't want to fall down. We started out by politely asking him to go slower, but he didn't listen at all. Then we started getting near a really big hill, where gravity would always make you go way too fast. When we were there, we'd always zigzag our way down to make it down safely. At this point, we were screaming at him to stop, but he did the opposite and was standing up on the bike so that he could go faster. And then he told us to let go of the bicycle if we didn't like it. But there was no way that we could have done that without falling, and he knew it. Even if he didn't know, he could clearly hear the fear in our voices. But he didn't stop before we were a good bit past that hill, and when we confronted him afterwards, he just said he only did what we wanted him to, and that it was our own fault. The second incident is the real creepy encounter that I had with this guy, but at the time, I just thought it was a bit weird. My mother, on the other hand, got really mad, and as an adult, I now understand why. I had met F in the driveway, and he invited me in for a cup of tea. I remember sitting on his couch and not liking the tea because it had no sugar. When I asked for some, he refused to give me any. Maybe he said he didn't have any, but anyways, I didn't like the tea, and he kind of forced me to drink it anyways, saying how I was the one who wanted it, and how he went through all the trouble of making it, and so on. He got kind of mad, so I did what he told me to do, because he was an adult, and I was only a child. That evening, I told my mom, and she right away took the phone and called him, and then she yelled at him for endangering us girls when we were roller skating, and got even more angry when she told him to never, ever invite me to his apartment, and especially to never force her little girl to do anything whatsoever again. This could be the end of the story, but actually, I met a guy about 10 years later, and he told me that F had informed him that I was the kind of girl that just needed to be cornered and pressured a bit, and then I'd put out. Yikes. I grew up with two families. One of them was dead. I'm not crazy. I have my whole family to back me up, and my uncle still lives in the house. The spirits aren't mean except the dad, banging on doors, cutting my auntie with a knife in soupy water, busting the sink, that kind of thing. It's probably worth mentioning that I'm firstborn of the power of 3. My aunties, my mom have gifts. All the girls in my family have gifts. The house has 2 levels, light baby blue with white trim, and it had 3 bedrooms, 1 bathroom. The Alive family, where my 2 aunties, my mom, my uncle, and my grandparents, they lived not too far away, plus me and my 3 cousins and some animals. The family of spirits was a father, a mother, and there were 2 children. After my mom did some digging, she found out what happened. Apparently, the father was abusive, and after going into a fit of rage, he killed his wife and his 2 kids, and then hung himself in the basement, which is where my uncle slept. All the spiritual happenings, I didn't know at the time, were preparing me for my illness that was going to happen 2 years after I moved away. I had a stroke when I was 5, and due to medical issues, I almost died 3 times. We lived regular lives with them until they attacked my cousin. He screamed in the middle of the night, and the adults came to check on him, and he had 3 scratches down his back. My mom got angry and yelled at them to never touch any of us like that again. We're cleansing the house to make you leave. They took the hint and left us alone. We still visit the house, and there's a silent understanding that we not be disrespectful. So that's the information about the second dead family I lived with. But I wanted to go into some more detail about my crazy connection with the spiritual world and the Blue House. The family in the Blue House with the father and the family that he killed, they weren't the only ones in the house. No one could really place where it was, but it learned our behaviors and scared the crap out of my auntie. As a joke, my mom would crawl on the floor beside the bed and scare my auntie. All in good fun. Everyone got a good kick out of it. While my auntie was still awake, she heard the very familiar sound of someone crawling beside the bed. She wanted to turn the tables and scare my mom instead, so she kept her eyes closed, and when she could feel that they were nose to nose, she opened her eyes quickly and didn't get a chance to say boo before realizing it wasn't my mom. It was a middle-aged man with red hair and a twisted smile on his face. She got up and grabbed me, running to my mom's room, sleeping in her single bed that night. As I grew up and my first cousin was born, the little kids became more predominant. Toys moving on their own, doors closing when told, comfort for being scared of the dark. If you put my cousin and the spirits side by side, you couldn't tell them apart from living or dead. After everyone left the house, the little boy attached himself to me. He's still here with me, making sure I'm safe. I'm not sure what happened to the little girl and the 3 others, but I'm not visiting anytime soon for my own safety. So my parents introduced me to a murderer. Well, a man capable of murder, and we didn't know just yet. He was a down-to-earth stoner with 3 kids and another one on the way, and with a super sweet wife who was also a little crazy. He came over and would tell my parents everything going on in his life, and then disappear for a few days. He always came back with some crazy stories, but never would assume anything bad about him. He'd tell us how his wife stabbed him in the foot, how the kids dug a hole in their trailer, that his mother-in-law was psycho. Once he came over, on the run, for having a gun at his mother-in-law's. He was there and gone in 5 minutes. I regularly check our state circuit court, and dude was never in legal trouble when I looked him up. So I just assumed that he had family issues and maybe a couple screws loose. Last time I saw him, he came over, smoked with my mom and my girl, told us how excited he was for this baby on the way, and he hoped that it looked more like him, as the last one was a clone of his mama. We all hung out together outside and drove the kids around on the ATV, bullshitting about our pasts and futures. He was hopeful. Not a bone in his body said aggressive. He was very empathetic, very family-oriented, and just kind. And then he went missing for 2 weeks. Not a peep from him or the wife. We then see his picture on the news with the title, "Murderer Takes Own Life," with his name attached. He apparently killed a man, took his body and dumped it, and when the police tried talking to him while he was in the car, he turned, looked at the police, and shot himself. I'm so confused, and I'll never even hear the full story. 2 dead men, no closure for anyone. I'll forever wonder, who else that I know is capable of murder? First, the backstory for context. At the beginning of my paranormal experience, the neighborhood that our house was in was not the safest. It was a very lower-income neighborhood in the heart of a large metropolitan city in its early stages of development and gentrification. When we moved in, 3 of the 5 houses bordering our property were legit drug houses. In my neighborhood at the time, it was best to keep to yourself, mind your own business, and not bring any attention to yourself. Our immediate next-door neighbor had constant traffic in and out of their house, and it was very obvious what was going on. Drugs. We always minded our business, but I tried to still be cordial and say hi and wave if my neighbor was outside at the same time as me. He was always polite to me, but we had very limited interaction. But sometimes, some of the neighbor's customers would make me very uncomfortable by watching me, catcalling me, or saying sexually or racially derogatory things if I was outside, doing yard work, taking out the trash, or getting in my car. I'd just ignore them and quickly go inside, but these interactions made me very uncomfortable. I didn't feel safe if I was home alone without my husband. 2 weeks after the paranormal experience that I'm about to share, we woke up in the middle of the night to a lot of commotion. When I looked out our bedroom window, I saw the cops raiding our neighbor's house. I found out later from news reports that the owners were charged with distributing heroin, cocaine, fentanyl, and crack cocaine. They also had a large stock of illegal firearms, a significant amount of cash, and one of the individuals living there was on the run, wanted on murder and robbery charges. He was hiding out in this house during the paranormal incident that I'll describe. So, the paranormal part. It was late one night, after midnight. My husband and dog were sleeping in our bedroom. We'd made chicken fajitas that night, so the packaging from raw chicken was inside the trash can. I was in the kitchen, bent over the trash can to take the bag out and take it to our recycling bin on the side of our house so that it wouldn't stink up my kitchen. Due to the way our property's set up, to get to the bin outside, I just walk out the front door and to the side of the house. When I was bent over the trash can getting ready to pull the bag out, I felt what I thought was my husband walk up right behind me, lean over me like he was about to hug me. He's 6'3", I'm 5'4", so he towers over me. I giggle and bend down further to dodge him and turn around quickly as I say, "I hug you first." And just as I turn and go to grab him around the waist to give him a big bear hug, I saw a woman standing in the middle of my kitchen, about 4 feet away from me. She instantly put her arms out towards me with her palms open, like you would do when telling someone to stop. And she floated, glided, quickly towards me while she mouthed, "No." And as soon as she got inches from me, she literally vanished into thin air. In one instance, she was gliding so quickly towards me, and the next, she just disappeared. I did not hear anything, but her face had an expression of panic, and even though I didn't hear her yell it, her mouth screamed, "No." This happened so fast, literally in a span of 2 or 3 seconds. The only details about her appearance that I could recall was that she was completely solid, not transparent or translucent. She was wearing a long black dress with long sleeves and a white double-layered scallop collar. The cuffs of her sleeves were slightly belled, and there were little white buttons going down the entire length of the front of the dress. She was about my height. Her eyes were strikingly light blue, and she had long, very thick, tight, curly, and very unruly jet black hair. She had pale skin, and she was floating a few feet above the ground. It happened so quickly, those are the only details I could immediately remember. I was in such shock and disbelief. Immediately after she vanished, I stood still for maybe 1 or 2 seconds, and then I bolted past where she was just a few seconds before and ran into my bedroom screaming for my husband to wake up. He instantly jumped out of bed and grabbed me, asked me what was wrong. I started crying. All I could manage to sputter out was, "Someone's in our house." Before I could explain further, he grabbed his pistol from the nightstand and ran out of the bedroom to find the intruder. Our dog, a 90-pound pit bull, who was in our bedroom at the time, also woke up and immediately started growling and barking at the entrance of our bedroom. He got in between me and the bedroom door frame and was barking and growling incessantly. I heard my husband calling for the dog for backup, and the dog refused to go to my husband, which is very out of character. My husband came back to our bedroom and said he didn't find anyone, that all the doors and windows are locked. There's no sign of a break-in. I told him he wouldn't find anything or anyone because it wasn't a person, but a spirit. At this point, my skeptic husband rolled his eyes and started berating me for waking him up to stupid ghost stories. But when he saw that I was so legitimately scared and shaken up, he sat down and asked me to explain what happened. After I told him the story, he just chalked it up to me hallucinating due to stress from work and insomnia, and he held me until I finally fell asleep. The next day, I FaceTimed my mom and told her what happened because I knew she'd believe me, because she grew up in a haunted house and has seen apparitions before. I just needed someone to tell me I wasn't crazy or hallucinating. When I described what the woman looked like, she fell silent and had a look of shock on her face. She told me that the woman I described was my great-grandmother, Gabriella, who my mother was extremely close to. She died before I was born. I had never seen a picture of her because the only photos that the family had of her were in a box that was lost in the 50s during my grandparents' move to the States. However, my mother said that my grandmother still had my great-grandmother's dress that she made herself and wore almost every day. The next weekend, I took a trip a state away to see my grandmother with my mother, and I told her what happened. We spent the day in her attic looking for the dress. My mother found it in a suitcase, and when she pulled it out, I was in disbelief. It was the same dress that the woman I saw was wearing. Long black dress with slightly flared belled sleeves, small white buttons along the length of the front of the dress, and the unmistakable double-layered white collar with the scalloped edges. After discussing everything with my mother and grandmother, we all believed that on that night, my great-grandmother, Gabriella, stopped me from taking the trash outside to protect me from someone outside. It's the only thing I can think of, especially considering the constant crime and questionable people that were always present outside my front door, so close to me. I truly believe that if I'd taken the trash out that night, I may have seen something that I shouldn't have, a drug deal in progress, or been assaulted by one of the neighbor's customers that would threaten and sexually harass me. Luckily for us, after the drug raid, the neighbor's house was foreclosed. A developer bought the house and tore it down to build a new one. The neighborhood has done a 180 and been cleaned up. Our property has increased in value tenfold since this happened 4 years ago. It's a genuinely safe neighborhood now. But after that experience, I will never walk out of my front door by myself in the middle of the night again, even if it means waking up to a stinky kitchen. Well, friends, it appears we've reached the end of tonight's episode. But don't miss a brand new episode every Friday night. I want to thank those who shared their stories, and a big thanks to all of you for listening. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to The Darkest Hour, and tap the bell so you never miss a thing. I sure do appreciate all of it and can't thank you enough. Huge shout out to all of my patrons for their unwavering support. MISANTHROPIA, Shane Q, Monica L, The Dark Cosmos, Zoe Watt, Shelly B, Rat Girl, ALISHA S, and a big welcome to The Darkest Hour's newest official patron, Aaron G. Remember, if you want to support The Darkest Hour in other ways, consider joining my Patreon. Check out patreon.com/thedarkesthour, or click the link in the description to learn more. You can keep up with me and all things Darkest Hour over on my Instagram, @thedarkesthouryt. If you prefer a quieter time, follow me on Twitter, AmandaJaneTDH. Do you have stories like these? I'd love to share them. Send them to me, amandadarkesthour@gmail.com, or on the Darkest Hour subreddit, The Darkest Hour YT. Stay spooky.